The latest, I would call it titanic kind of reverberation through Europe and many of the NATO countries comes from the former president, Donald Trump, who never really got the nuance and fragile nature of alliances to begin with, I'd suggest. But he made these comments. I would put him in the category of sort of a mobster making these comments, sort of pay up for protection. Tony, do you have it? Can you roll it a little bit? This is
One
at a
of the
rally.
presidents of a big country stood up and said, well, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? You're delinquent? He said, yes, let's say that happened. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay.
So, first of all, that conversation, of course, never happened. He just
he's
concocted
completely lying. I mean, what gave it away was when he goes that the leader or the president of a country said, sir.
Yeah,
well, that
exactly.
would not happen for a start. So,
and then when he said, when the leader or president of a country said, yeah, let's say that happened, I'm thinking, really? The whole thing is just so clearly, a lie.
Yeah.
But it does also reflect his view of the world, right? And America's role in it.
Well, he's just dumb. I mean, to not understand that we are a unified country, a unified planet. I forget how many countries there are. I think it's around 210 countries. Someone will have to look it up. I think it's around 210 countries. But, so NATO is comparatively small if you consider that there are that many countries. And so the alliance was set up and designed to save us from what happened in 1939 through 1945. Right? It was created as a safety net, protection, so that you would never see, the rise of some despot in Germany who then invades Poland, and the rest is history. It was designed to protect it, and the United States is a big part of that task force. Now, he probably doesn't know what it is. In the same way that he never read the Constitution of the United States or took any interest in the protocols or of U.S. international relations, the guy is a moron. So he is literally saying it because he's trying to get elected and is appealing to the worst kind of people, to isolationist, America first, xenophobes. That's who he's appealing to. Because remember, he said it at a rally. He probably wouldn't have said it if he was being interviewed by, Al Jazeera. But so he always changes his story based on his audience. And there, his audience were, red hat wearing sycophants. And so he's like, yeah, I'm the strong man. It's just so depressing that we still have to take this guy seriously. And of course, now that there are leaders of other countries, the NATO chief, for example, Jens Stoltenberg, he has said that any attack on the Western military alliance would be met with a united and forceful response after the announcement that he was effectively inviting Russia to do it. And, Trump's always denying his connections with Russia. And here he is effectively saying, I would encourage Russia to attack. I mean, this is the stuff of not just authoritarianism, but of an America-hating rebel. Somebody who needs to be controlled. And this is the thing that should get him arrested, right? This is the thing that should prevent him from running for office, aside from all the other things that should stop him from running for office. It's terrifying, Mark, and it won't get the coverage it deserves.
No, it's interesting. I think it is getting some play, but you're right. The disqualifying nature of his rhetoric really isn't disqualifying in this bizarre Alice in Wonderland America in which we live.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so weird, isn't it? How, because I don't believe in the same free speech as you have here, because I grew up in a country where our speech is regulated. So the UK is still a free speech nation, but hate speech is not tolerated. And these rules evolved with time because things in society became less acceptable. To be racist is not acceptable. So therefore it goes into the category of hate speech. But for some reason in the United States, the First Amendment protects people from anything. You're allowed to be as racist as you like here. And I wouldn't mind, but this country has a much bigger problem with racism than the UK does, and yet we're going out of our way to protect it. So This really is the thing. I'm not what Elon Musk calls a free speech absolutist. Is that what he calls himself? Absolutist. Right. I mean, that is, to me, that is just, you're a bad person. You're just a bad person.
The shadow producer Calvin Wong says, already betraying NATO, yet the right wing loves him. It is a weird thing that whether they love him or not, I'd suggest that the right, certainly from a legislative standpoint, the congressional right, if you want to think of him that way, they have rallied around him to the point that they've derailed the latest bipartisan border deal. It's a bizarre hold that he has on that party.
Well, that's right. And of course, a leading Republican, they're calling it, said Trump was simply ringing the warning bell when he caused global alarm by declaring the world would encourage Russia he would encourage Russia to attack NATO allies. So when I was reading this story, I was like, I wonder who this guy is. Well, of course, it's Tom Cotton. Who can at every juncture will support Donald Trump and claims that strength, not weakness, deters aggression. I mean, it's so childish because diplomacy is so it's such a great skill. It's something that America was always really good at. We had some great negotiators, and the United Nations has obviously played a big part in this, and coming out of the Paris Climate Accord was a huge, detrimental to world peace. Coming out of the Iran nuclear deal was detrimental to world peace. And he would have come out of NATO if he wasn't stopped and if his term hadn't have ended. And that is terrifying because it's not all about the bottom line. 2% of your GDP is an awful lot of money. America can afford it, but some countries can't.
Yeah, the idea, you pay your fair share. It's a question of what your fair share is. But it's interesting also, I would suggest that Trump's view of the world and, Biden's view of the world, I mean, Trump's view of the world is all through Trump. I mean, he just really looks at his brand as the most important thing.
It's his view of him via the world.
Thank you. And Biden has made Ukraine and support of Ukraine a key component of his foreign policy. So the imperative associated with supporting Ukraine is something that is being orphaned right now by, as I've suggested, this GOP derailing of the bill, even that's been broken out to just fund Ukraine or Israel. I mean, they're unable to get anything off the tarmac in Congress.
And this is all coming from Trump. He's made it absolutely clear that he does not want anything done that gives Biden any points in between now and November. He just doesn't. And that is the proof. I mean, the one that I thought was the most impactful, aside from, of course, the necessity to Ukraine and undoubtedly, Israel and Gaza, was when he said he wanted the economy to crash between now and then. And I was just like, if this isn't a clue to either independent or even some Republican voters that this guy is nuts and has no love for America, I don't know what is. He said he wanted the economy to crash, he wanted there to be a recession and the stock market to fall between now and November, just not on his watch. I mean, the economy is doing better than ever, much better than it did under him.
And much better than many other European countries, all of which were coming out of the same sort of COVID nightmare that we had.
Especially Britain, which has not even seen any positive growth post the pandemic. Probably because they're still paying for that track and trace system that they built for £37 million. So this is my great concern, is that how many things does Trump have to say that are disqualifying, both as a candidate for president and as an American, before people start to go, something, I don't think this guy is very good.
The Supreme Court is now facing this issue. They will likely vote to retain Trump on these ballots. I mean, by, essentially overruling the court in Colorado that would remove Trump's name. And the reason, at least they seem to be citing in oral arguments, is associated with the precedent that it would set. If you take a candidate off the ballot in Colorado, would another candidate be taken off the ballot in Michigan and Pennsylvania, et cetera? It's an odd thing for them to say and be concerned with, precedent, that is, given the decision they made on Roe, given the decisions they made on guns, On one level, they say they don't care about precedent. It's all, they just make judgments at the court level.
Yeah.
Even in Gore v. Bush, they said this isn't precedent. This is just this one time. Stop the count in Florida. George Bush is the winner. But here, they're all about precedent. They're all about what would this do in terms of voting elsewhere. Now, leave aside, it might be a good idea or not to have candidates removed from ballots. But it's an odd thing that the Supreme Court really, at a time that they are stressed from the standpoint of credibility, they seem to really be wildly political.
Well, you could start with the fact that Clarence Thomas didn't recuse himself. This is a guy whose wife has been implicated in the January 6th insurrection. So, that if that's the position that we're starting from, then we're not going to get very far with this one. It makes no sense to me that your high court judges are political appointees. That in itself is just weird. It's just weird because people are chosen for partisan reasons, and then the fact that you have a political court that is currently stacked Republican or far-right Christian nationalist is just weird. But you guys have got used to it. You think it's normal. I don't think it's normal. That aside, Donald Trump put 3 people on the court during his tenure, one in the last 2 weeks of his tenure, because he needed protection. He wanted to be saved from anything that was coming his way, because as we know, when he asked for full immunity last week and said, all presidents should have full immunity, otherwise they can't get anything done, he's basically saying, yeah, I broke the law, I'm going to break the law again, and that's what presidents do, they break the law. Well, okay, fine. You and Mr. Nixon have a nice life. But in reality, he knew he had a safety net there on the court because he had set that up. He chose some people that weren't particularly qualified. He chose, Amy Coney Barrett, in some weird extremist cult. Brett Kavanaugh likes beer, and Neil Gorsuch nobody can reach. And so these 3 were his safety net, and they came through for him. Because I listened to the oral arguments, and whenever anybody mentioned insurrection or insurrectionist or January 6th, one of those 3 changed the subject and was making these weird references to, the framers and the founders. And I was like, we watched it on TV, guys. Like, you watched it with us. It's not in question whether the guy's an insurrectionist. He said, come with me to the Capitol. We're going to fight like hell. And if you don't fight, we're not going to have a country left. He actually said those things out loud. And then he literally tried to fight for the steering wheel in the Beast to get them to drive him there.
Well, and he allowed his followers who he knew were armed to try to get them to be able to sort of circumvent those metal detectors.
Correct. And in fact, today there was a picture in one of the newspapers of someone firing a gun in the air, hanging on to that kind of access tower that was built for the inauguration. Firing a gun, which proved that there was a firearm there. And so, anyway, the whole thing is jokes. It's like your reality and my reality are 2 different things. I watched an insurrection on screen. I also watched, because they also argued that it wasn't an organized insurrection. That was one of the arguments. Well, excuse me, what about this whole fake electors scheme? What about, you had that guy from Overstock flying all over the country, and Roger Stone, all these people involved getting this fake electors scheme in place, sending fake envelopes, trying to get Mike Pence to switch them. How is that not organized? Even getting all these people to the Capitol, be there, it will be wild, said the Post. It's like, that's what happened. We all saw it. You saying there wasn't an insurrection and it wasn't organized is insulting, frankly, and you guys are Supreme Court judges. All it is doing is exposing your partisan, giving clarity to how partisan your decision-making is.
Well, I love that you've focused on that, because what will happen in the case of this 14th Amendment is that it will be both liberal justices and conservative justices that will vote against removing him from the ballot. In fact, even you heard Lenny Kagan, Justice Kagan, asking questions that pertain to what I was saying before, which is what happens if you take, wouldn't this open the door to being essentially removed from ballots if you're a presidential candidate across the board in different states? So, but I love that you have focused and underscored what happened before that sort of bipartisan, if you want to think of it that way, questioning, which is the total ignoring of Donald Trump's hand in an attempted coup. I mean, there's no question about it.
It was a coup in plain sight. And he's going to do it again, because this is the other thing that they're leaving out, is that January 6, 2021 was a rehearsal for next January. And undoubtedly, if Trump is on the ticket and he loses, he will claim it was fraudulent and the whole thing will start over. And this time, the Capitol will be successfully overrun because they'll have an even better plan. Goodness knows what it'll be. Hopefully, the National Guard will be allowed to show up this time.
It's the 5-minute news, and I love your weekend show on the Midas Network,
which went up against the Super Bowl last night.
I saw that. And you did okay, actually.
I did okay. Yeah, we had Professor Cornell William Brooks on, as you can see. He's the former boss of the NAACP, and a minister and a civil rights lawyer, and he's just amazing. So I do recommend that people check that out and catch up with it, because it was a very powerful episode. But I didn't even watch the Super Bowl because obviously I was watching myself on the other side. But who won?
America won, Anthony. That's the. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.